Hello, everybody, and welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions, we've got guesses. I'm Nash, been doing this for ages. In addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who also works in IT. Hey, we got a 47 months in a row. Hey, thanks so much for that, too, Pulsar. That's almost an entire year. So,
I see we're doing Intel math.
Yeah, exactly. It is, we're taking your questions as always. So go ahead and send those to request@radiodeadair.com. We have a few in the wings waiting. We also got some news stories this week. First, I don't need it. I know I don't need it. I really, really don't need it. But
iFixit has new toys out.
I want it. They have iFixit came out with a USB-C powered portable soldering iron. Where is it? Yeah, Fix Hub. Wait, show me the power. Just show me. $250 fucking dollars. And I want it. I do not need it. I have a soldering iron station. It's just, it plugs into the wall.
How often do you use it?
Occasionally.
Yeah, that's the other reason why you go, I don't need it. It'd be nice, but I don't need it.
I mean, I used it to modify this microphone I'm talking into, but that was a while back. It was at least a month or so back. No, but yeah, a USB-C portable soldering iron. Do you know one of the biggest fucking issues with trying to repair shit is you have to, typically with a soldering iron, a good one, you have to bring stuff over to your workbench. And sometimes that's not real practical depending on the electronics in question.
Indeed.
So the idea of having this little soldering station, which is variable temperature, it's rechargeable, this little station that you could bring to the broken thing and do the soldering.
Now, one thing I didn't get to look at it in detail. Does it have an internal battery that you charge off USB-C, or do you still have to drag power over there?
It charges off USB-C. And then, you can run it plugged in, but it's based on a battery inside. Because, yeah, it's got it. That is a really nice holster. I know it's a weird thing to say. It's a really nice holster for the soldering iron, too. Most of them just have the sort of cage design because it's cheaper and easier. This is like, you ain't going to burn shit with this. And it's a nice little pen-sized soldering iron. It's so good. I want one. It's like, I don't want one $250 worth because I have so many other things I'm spending money on, like the fucking roof. But thank God that's done. I mean, there obviously people have been soldering for ages without having a portable one. Typically, you have to use a fire-based one, a fire-based soldering iron, or get one of those gun style with a really long extension cord.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'll be honest with you. I suspect there's going to be people at work who would go like, yeah, we need to get some of these. Mike, do these count as IT equipment? And I'll go, no, they do not. But don't plug the USB-C into your work computer.
So, all right. Let's get to the top story of the week, of course, which is one everyone's been talking about. Sony has finally announced the PS5 Pro for
Pardon me a moment while I yawn.
$700 US, which, by the way, it's also being offered. It's also being sold for 700. Is it 700 British pounds at the same time? Which that's one of those tricky things they've been doing lately that is really irritating. I got to look up the price chart that I had earlier. Companies been doing this. Special electronics companies have been doing this for a while now. They will give something one price in a region, and like they do this specifically with pounds. All right. So it's $700 US and 700 pounds, which there's a gap there.
Which is nearly $920 US. And now you can say, well, maybe it's additional shipping. No, it's not really additional shipping. And it's not really additional import duties. It's just they're hoping people will pay it.
And also 799 euros, which is also closer to 1,000 US dollars. What? Now,
I'm seeing 885, but
for euros, 885. Oh, I thought
no, 885. Hang on. Yes, 885. 799 euros
is $885.
$885.
All right, it's close to 900, but still, that's still, why did I think that euros were more valuable? I guess exchange rates changed a bit. Anyway, now what's the new in the PS5 Pro? Much like the PS4 Pro, this is their mid-generation refresh for the PS5. It will still play all of the original PS5 games. If it didn't, it'd be weird. It's compatible with all the PS5 hardware, your PS5 account, all that stuff. But added to it, they have bumped up the graphics on it. Now, on the PS5, to give you an idea about where the graphics are at on the PS5, they're approximately, given by some tests, Digital Foundry did some tests to work this out. They're approximately as good as an RX 6700 / RX 7600. So they're fairly entry-level gaming graphics, which that's not, RX 7600 is a really good card for the money, just for an entry level. And being that the PS5 was sitting around $400 all together, no assembly required, plug it in and go. It was kicking butt. I mean, pretty much the entry level gaming PC has been priced out of existence at the moment, because even if you put together something, with about the same amount of money or even a little bit more money, the PS5 is still going to beat it. Now, however, the GPU is going to be a little bit closer to somewhere between a 7600 and 7700 XT, a 7700 if they had such a thing. But it's a monolithic die. So in case you didn't know, AMD makes all of the console, Microsoft and Sony's console chips. It's a combination CPU and GPU chip. It's very similar between the two consoles, between Xbox and PS5. This one's going to be a slightly revamped model. And if you take into account the 7700 XT is $300 all by itself, you're kind of getting the idea where some of the price increase is coming from here. Now, in addition to that, well, I guess in subtraction of that, they've removed the optical drive.
Yeah. But we'll sell you a separate one, right?
For $80. Do you know how much an optical drive for a PC is right now?
20, 15?
You can get one inside a box of Cracker Jacks. They're giving them away.
No, Nash. The box of Cracker Jacks is way smaller than an optical drive.
Like they are. The vertical stand. I
can 3D print a vertical stand for that thing for like $1.
They're trying to sell you the vertical stand separately. So one of the problems here is if you are using your existing library of games, your PS4 library and whatnot that are on disc with your PS5, and you want to use them with this thing, well, you've gone from $700 to $800. $780, but that's a de facto $800 with tax and shipping and all that stuff. So the value proposition of the PS5 right now, which is sitting around 400 with sales and Black Friday coming and all that, and I'm pretty sure the Xbox Series X has come down a bunch too. Those were have effectively killed the gaming PC entry, because the only real entry-level CPU for gaming PCs right now is the i3 12100F. That is the only real one. Price-wise, it's under $100. You can use it on a motherboard with DDR5. It's relatively modern. So i3 12100F, which is already kind of getting a little slammed by the CPU in this one, and an RX 6600, a system based on that. We've done the math on this. Well, last year around Christmas, it was about $600, and we skimped on that as much as we possibly could, to the bone. And even then, the PS5 Pro was a faster, more powerful gaming system than a $600 entry-level PC. But you change this to a $700, $800 proposition, that changes things a bit. Because with that $700 to $800, you can build a much faster gaming CPU system. Even an RX 7600 is already gaming about the same speed as a 5800X 3D, and that's the entry level for AMD right now, which is $200 for one of those. You could put together a system for about the same price as the PS5 Pro, which destroys the PS5 Pro. And this was one of the problems with consoles for the longest time. Like the PS3 and the PS4 and the Xbox Series X. Even if you got those, and the prices on those, for the money you got for those, you could build a better computer. And that's what kept enthusiast gaming PCs alive, because you could do that. But with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, they really killed the value proposition, especially considering you have AMD and Nvidia keeping the prices on graphics cards ridiculously high. So entry level
until their warehouses start filling up and they go, okay, maybe we need to do a price cut and make some room.
Yeah. So entry level gaming PCs has the definition has changed considerably. They aren't even really competing with consoles anymore. And that's kind of how the PS5 has just walked away being the de facto gaming box for the past few years. Who is this for, though? Really? Because you get some more graphic fidelity, you get some more anti-aliasing up to 4K and stuff, but it's going to be using a lot of FSR to deal with the frame rate and whatnot. It's going to do digital frame generation. Okay, great. It's got all those features and such. Who is this for? If you care about that stuff enough to even know what any of it is, you're not buying a PS5 Pro. You're buying a PC. Because it's stupid to put the money into this. There aren't I think there's Astrobot is the big exclusive for PS5 right now, and you can play that on a PS5. Does anyone know offhand? I probably should have looked this up. How many PS4 Pro exclusives were there? Because I'm not entirely sure. There were zero PS4 Pro exclusives. So every PS4 Pro game could be played on a PS4. The value proposition of this gets less and less as we talk about it. It's kind of descending. So there may be PS5 exclusives, but they're not going to be a PS5 Pro exclusives.
Yeah, doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It really feels like Sony said, we would like more money. How can we get more money? I know, we'll do this again. Why aren't we getting any money?
Well, other people have said that this is a way to put downward price pressure on the existing PS5 and the PS5 Slim and to just kind of be a halo product for the PS5. Someone on Twitter postulated that, and I thought about it. Just that doesn't make sense because this is just, on the other hand, this is just such an unattractive deal. I mean, why couldn't they just throw in the vertical stand? Are the margins that razor thin on this thing that the vertical stand has to be an extra, or are they just being, freaking greedy?
That just really feels like they're being dicks.
I mean, yeah, kind of. That's kind of.
And you may have said, but I missed it. How much is the vertical stand?
I didn't see that. I think it's like another $20, maybe.
So the vertical stand is the price of
30. Thank you, moist crunchy potato. $30.
So it's the price of a high-end optical drive from anyone else.
Yeah.
For a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
That you could probably get 2 or 3 of the really extra large binder clips from work. Those 1.5 inch wide guys, and just put those and have a vertical stand that way.
So yeah, the price of the vertical stand is how much you would spend for an optical drive on a computer, and the optical drive is $80, which $80 for an optical drive. Part of the price of that $80 is they do the stupid thing. They got this from Apple. The optical drive is tied to the console. There's a DRM chip on your optical drive, and that has to match the PS5. Now you can remove that chip and put it onto a new optical drive. You know what you're doing, but yeah, they have to. You can't just. They have to be. They have to match, or else the optical drive won't work with the.
You can't just use any old optical drive.
Yeah. So, yeah, it. I'm not going to say this is a tremendous misfire because Sony's still going to be selling PS5s hand over fist, and the generation only has, since they do this is a mid-generation refresh. We've only got 2-3 years left in the PS5 life cycle before we're on to the PS6. 4 Max, yeah. Yeah, Sony loves proprietary tech. Oh, yes, they do. Well, no, I think Xbox does that stuff with their optical drives too, if I'm not mistaken. They both kind of do that. I don't know why. So yeah, it's not gone over well on social media. There are some people who are like, "Ooh, I want," but I still don't understand. Anyone who's really latched on to graphical fidelity for your gaming, you're not on a console because you like the switches and the settings and the sliders. You like playing with all that stuff. Modern consoles are freaking great because if you do not give a shit about drivers or compatibility or installations or any of that crap, you have a box, you plug it into your TV, you plug it into the wall, you pick up a controller, you throw in a disc, and you play. Simple as fuck. So this thing it's adding an extra tier of stuff because it's going to have sliders and graphical adjustments to work in 4K and get it to at least 30 frames per second, if not 60 frames a second. This is not for that audience. And I don't know. I'm sure there is some segment of the console audience that is like, I wish I had a more powerful version of my console, but I really don't care about a PC. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. I mean, there is obviously someone at Sony crunched some numbers and said, yes, this makes sense to sell. We will sell this many units. But I'm going to point out that they've done projections like that, presumably in the past, on other things, which then turned out not to sell. That people said, yeah, we don't want it.
Like AI. Well, another thing that's playing against this and played against the PS4 Pro, although the PS4 Pro, I will say, had a more demonstrable graphic fidelity up. People have looked at the two shots between the PS5 and the PS5 Pro and the examples. They can't tell much graphics difference between the two. So that's already a problem. If you already have a PS5, the incentive to spend I mean, I guess you could trade your PS5 in for a while, but the incentive to spend the equivalent of effectively another PS5 for a slight upgrade, I don't know how well that's going to be I don't know how much that a draw that's going to be. So, all right. Moving on, it's always good to bully corporations. Always good. Well, this is sort of a, glass half full situation, but still.
Yeah.
You may have
I want to say we predicted this.
Yes. You may recall a while back, early this year. Yeah, last year. Unity decided they were going to try to squeeze more money out of developers. And the way they were going to do that is they were going to charge an installation runtime fee. So every game you made using Unity, every time it got installed somewhere, you, the developer, were going to be charged by Unity for the installation of that game. And that went over like a lead fucking balloon, not just with developers, but also also with gamers who would have to contend with the fact that their game would have to phone home to tell Unity that it installed. There's going to have to obviously be some sort of infrastructure built into place to enable the phone home.
Because the obvious thing first is that, hey, I put it together a new computer. I can either, the hard drive on my old computer is not really terribly compatible. I'll just reinstall my Steam library. Oh, look. Now that developer owes Unity more money, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, Unity has said, okay, we're not going to do that. They put up a blog post. They said they're not canceling the runtime fee. They're not going to go forward with that anymore. It's done. But they are going to increase their subscription prices for Unity. 8% increase. Unity Personal remains free for up to $200,000 of sales. Unity Pro is going to have a per let's say annual upgrade of 8% to $2,200. Unity Enterprise is going to get, that's if you make a game that sells over $25 million. So some of the larger games. They're going to
$25 million in revenue or funding.
Right. So like a Kickstarter that does really well, if you bring in $25 million, you have to use Unity Enterprise. Well, they're bumping the price of that up 25%. The chutzpah.
I feel though that is such a minority of games that they may never see that one. They're not going to see that one very often.
Well, part of this is why that they're trying to reconfigure their bullshit is this was so deeply fucking unpopular that developers went, oh, we're not using this shit anymore.
Yeah. Developers jumped ship to other platforms as quickly as they could. I mean, there were some big stories about developers going, there's going to be a delay in our game because we have to get rid of the entire Unity engine and we're going to go to something else. And that's going to cause some refactoring. And often when dealing with gamers, you say, hey, there's going to be a delay in the game. They go, oh, that's such BS, man. Why can't you guys put out a game on time? This time the gamers were like, no, man, we're with you. We understand.
Yeah, Unity pissed off everybody. And now
the guy who did that,
yeah,
that whole thing, we're going to have this, retired a month after it was done. They had a massive wave of layoffs through last year and through this year. And they're going, oh, everyone hates us. Maybe we should revert some of this stuff so we don't hate us anymore and we can continue to exist as a company.
And I want to point out, Ricciello managed to, or Ricciello, however you say that, he got to retire, which meant he got even more money to stop doing his job. They had to lay people off at Unity through 2024, but the CEO got paid to stop working because he had done a bad job. He got money to stop doing his job.
Well, we assume yes, a golden parachute. I don't think I ever saw an article that said what it was, but they tend to keep those things a little secret unless it's completely outrageous and someone squeals.
But yeah, this helped. Unreal has seen an uptick in adoption instead of Unity for as an engine for game development. Existing Unity developers made a loud showing of we're moving out somewhere else. This has just been an overall disaster. So I don't even know if these price increases are going to hold, because if you're trying to bring people back saying, we'll give you the same thing you had before, but you have to pay more for it, not really a good sales pitch to me. Like, you could still be using Unreal. Like, okay, so we come back to you to pay more to use your shit, or we just keep using this other shit we've been using. I think we're going to use the other shit we've been using because it doesn't cost us. Fuck you guys. I don't know what's going to happen with Unity over this, but this might have been a kill shot for the company long term. The reputational damage they did, the monetary damage they did, the fact that they pushed everyone else to try to find an alternative. Yeah, this is long term. I don't see how they keep going, because they are partners with developers. Developers rely on them as a basis for making games. And if they've proved themselves to be an unreliable partner, they're out. Who's going to work with them? So, one more story this week. This one is mainly just kind of interesting, but also infuriating. Fucking infuriating. So, Nvidia has released a new version of the RTX 4070 that uses GDDR6 memory instead of the slightly faster GDDR6X.
And the reason for this is apparently that Nvidia can't source the amount of GDDR6X that they need, but GDDR6, you can basically pick it off trees.
And the GDDR6X is probably getting shifted over to, at least as far as NVIDIA is concerned, they're probably reserving that for the RTX 50 series, for the 5090, 5080, and all that was coming.
I would. That makes sense.
But here's the infuriating part about this. After changing it for the slightly slower RAM, slightly, not even all that much, just slightly.
In fact, the numbers here are like less than a 2% decrease on high-end things, which is a frame or two, which most people can't even notice.
And that is only at 4K and up.
Yep.
Down at 1080p and 1440p, you can't even notice any difference in frame rate.
So the infuriating part, they've said, okay, we've done this thing. We're using cheaper parts now, so we can actually make these in quantities that people can buy, because we can't get the memory here to make them in the quantities we want. Price doesn't come down.
Price is not changing. It is still going to be $550. Even though Nvidia is saving money on every card, the price is staying the same. So they're making the card with cheaper shit, and yet it's going to cost you the exact same amount. Fuck you. Fuck you. Like, I know we're trying to be at least a little impartial here about this to present, but fuck you. Come on. What's further infuriating is they could have done this up and down the product line. Oh yeah, and Rajamek makes a good point here is there's not going to be anywhere on the box that indicates you're getting the version with the slower RAM. Nowhere. It's keeping the exact same product name, which is also an infuriating practice and very anti-consumer. And yeah, the other point here is if the difference in speed was this minuscule, why weren't you using GDDR6 from the start?
Good question. Maybe they thought they could get the supply and it'd be a better PR / selling point. But
this is also the same company that charged an extra $100 to add another 8 gigs of RAM to the 4060 Ti. $100 for 8 gigs is ridiculous, considering they already cost $400.
Given that the actual cost of the RAM is about $25. They could have put it up 50 and people are going like, that's reasonable, and still made $25 profit. No, they said, no, we're going to put it at 100 because $75 profit is more.
Original Pirate Novelist. I don't know if the SKU is going to be the same, but for most people, that's not going to matter. It's going to be an RTX 4070. Who's even going to be aware of this change? Unless you're really into this stuff, right? Unless you're really, paying attention. Who's even going to know? Now the fortunate thing here is there hasn't been much of a performance difference, and the 4070 is not really intended to be a 4K card. It can do some stuff at 4K, but it's not intended to be a 4K card. So a performance difference of 2% is not a big deal. However, this is more reason than ever to buy your video cards used.
Indeed.
Because if you buy a used video card on eBay, you have buyer protection through eBay, and Nvidia doesn't get one dime of that transaction. Not one thin penny.
Which they hate.
No, they hate that. Yeah. They don't get a cent from buying used. Used is always preferable.
They have less justification for getting money from used, though, than used books. Authors do for used books. And some authors, not all, hate the idea of used bookstores because they don't get any money off of it.
So this is also AMD this week actually confirmed to Tom's Hardware, which is rare for them, that they are not going to make a Halo product for the next series of Radeon cards. They are focusing entirely on the mid-range, which their goal, AMD's goal with the next series of Radeon is to get at least 40% of the market. They want to bring up their overall numbers. And the way they're going to do that is they're going to focus on selling video. They're going to have most saturation by selling cards to people at a price point where they're actually gaming, where they can freaking afford it. Which Intel's got new stuff coming, so we don't know what that's going to look like. But we definitely know that whatever Nvidia comes out with next is going to be insanely overpriced. And it pretty much seems that AMD has went, okay, take it.
I mean, unless Nvidia gets an entire new set of bean counters who point things out to the executives and say, look, we need to lower these prices if you want these things to sell.
So in any event, if you're in the market for an RTX 4070, beware. It's not really going to affect the performance that much, but it's irritating that it affects it at all, and yet they're not changing the product name, which screw that. Nvidia is just, they're the worst these days. You wish somebody else, I mean, you really wish that Intel and AMD would put some pressure on them, just for the love of God. Anyway. All right, that's our news for this week. Now let's get to your actual questions. Let's see if we've had any more come in. I don't think we have. All right, let's start off with the pain in the butt. This comes from Xenot Hedgehog from our YouTube comments. Dear Nash and Mike, over the past year or so, various video players have stopped working on my Firefox browser, even when I turn all of my plugins off. They work without issue in other browsers, but I cannot figure out why they would suddenly stop working in my Firefox browser or how to get them to work properly again. Clearing the cache, deleting the cookies seems to have gotten some of them to work, but they are much slower to load than they used to be.
Okay, so one thing I've run into with Firefox a few times at work is that sometimes it has fragmentary parts of previous versions of Firefox. Like an update comes out and the Firefox updater will go, okay, yeah, we need to remove this and this and this and put in new components that replace those, just new versions of whatever components those are. And sometimes it doesn't get all of them done right. And I don't know whether it's a case of it's the Firefox installer, they're not coding something properly there, or if it's the case of just the computer said, no, you can't uninstall that. That file is locked right now. You can't remove that. And so you end up with compatibility issues in that regard. And we've had to do full uninstalls of Firefox and then a full reinstall to get it to work. And that may be the direction you need to go in.
Now, the good news about Firefox now is used to be you would have to actually create a backup of your profile and such to, make sure you'd be able to work. But now all you have to do is log into the Mozilla account, get a Mozilla account, log in, and synchronize it. What that will do is that'll save your bookmarks, that'll save your extensions, that'll save everything you have on your browser as it is. And all you have to do is you have to log in to access it. And that allows you to do it on any other computer. But if you completely uninstall Firefox, and I mean not just uninstall, what else you'll need to do is you will need to go into you're going to want to go in, open up. Well, okay, hit the Windows button, Windows R. That brings up the run. And then you're going to want to, do I put in the search bar? Not run. Okay. I know I'm stumbling over myself here. I'm sorry. Okay, search bar on your Explorer.
Windows Explorer.
You're going to want to type this out, okay? %, program data, all one word, %. And that will send you to a file, a folder that saves data for installed programs. You're going to look for a folder named Mozilla. You're going to delete that. You're going to go back. You're going to search for one, this time, %app data, APP data, all one word, %. And you're going to go there, and they're going to be, there's a folder Mozilla there. Then there's 3 more folders. One's called local, one's called local low, and one's called roaming. You want to make sure that delete Mozilla folder from all of those.
Yes. Now, hang on. Let me correct one thing that Ash said here. So,
yeah,
if you say %app data, one word, lowercase, it takes you to app data roaming by default. But if you do % app data uppercase,
Okay.
Oh, it still does. There used to be a difference. I forget what it is.
Well, it'll take you to the roaming folder. You just have to go up one level to find local and local low. But
there was some way you went to the local load, just the root app data. And I can't remember what it was. I used to do it all the time at work.
But doing that will flush just about everything. And once you've uninstalled, that will flush just about everything out of the system related to Firefox. Then you can reinstall, log into a Mozilla account. It'll draw down your extensions again. It'll copy over your bookmarks. You'll be back exactly where you were. That's probably the best way to get back your video players behaving themselves again. Did I miss anything?
No, that is everything.
Yeah, that's the best recommendation we have here, because quite simply, with a lot of these things, they are very complicated. They get very sprawling. It's hard to track down what's causing what. And the most reliable solution, quite often, is to wipe the hell out and put it back on again.
Okay, this is good. How I did the directory up from there until I remember what it is.
This is going to be probably, hopefully, a quick one. This is from Vet Gaming, also on YouTube. I won't pretend to understand what live disk means. But can't you still use, this is when we were talking about Linux last week. Yeah. Can't you still use a 4+ gigabyte size on dual layer DVDs? Gives you 8+ gigs, and they're still out there in burnable form. Sure, it's niche, but it's how I installed Windows 10 on this PC. I mean, yes, you can. Well, live CD, live disk, what I was talking about in the context of Linux.
Yeah.
Linux has in their installer a very unique feature that Windows, I think it can do it, but not by default. When you make a Linux installer for most every distro, Mint, Ubuntu, all the big ones, and you boot from it, it actually, it's not just an installer, it will run Linux. It will run a full Linux desktop. You can do all the Linux stuff from that USB. Now, it will be a little slower because it will be reading and writing from the USB drive, but it will be a full, complete operating system without you having to install anything. That made it really attractive. It still is. You can do this from the USB installer. It's a really attractive way to diagnose hardware issues, because if you're having a hardware issue on Windows and you want to find out, is it Windows causing it, or do I have a broken piece of technology? A fast way to diagnose it is to run a Linux Live CD or DVD or USB, whichever you call it these days, because that does a full, actual, real install of Linux. It's not just an installer for Linux, although you can get to that from there. That's the main purpose of it. It also does all the Linux drivers, all of the stuff in the background. It will run just like a fully installed version of Linux. That way, it's not like a safe mode or anything. It's not like a reduced version. You can go in and push the hardware to see if you can find out, is the hardware still behaving the same way in Linux? And if it doesn't, chances are the hardware's fine. Your problem is in Windows, which helps narrow down. It's a quick diagnostic tool, and it's not 100%, but it does help you narrow down stuff. Other things that are on there that are fairly useful is there's partition management. There are a couple other utilities that you can get easily that you can technically get from the Windows installer, but they're not readily available. And a lot of them are.
I have a Linux boot disk that I use on certain systems at work that has a set of utilities on there. And this is not for my network systems. This is for my standalone systems where someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Mike, no one's logged into the system for 2 years. You need to get into it. No one remembers the passwords." I have a way to reset passwords with that. But it uses Linux to get in there and do that.
Now, if I want, yes, the dual layer DVD, one of the problems that we don't use DVDs for installers anymore is not only the fact that USB sticks are more convenient, every installer slowly started creeping beyond the regular DVD capacity of 4 gigabytes. 4 gigabytes used to be the limit for the main burnable DVDs. They developed another version called dual layer, and that can burn up to about 8 gigs. So in theory, like you said, that's how you reinstall Windows 10 on that PC. In theory,
the problem is they became more and more niche as time went on.
Yeah, you have to have a DVD driver capable of supporting dual layer burning, and you have to have the discs, which are dual layer. Now, they're not impossible to find. They still make them because there are companies out there that still.
Turns out I have some at work.
There's and there's also companies out there that rely on those for backups for their systems. But you can use the USB stick. It's just, for me, it's just not the same. Anyway. All right. Let's get to 2 more questions here. This is from Nandir. Nashu Mike, how bad an idea is it to use AliExpress for tech parts? I don't mean CPUs and GPUs. I've seen enough horror stories. Okay. But what about cases and coolers and fans and things? Is it worth it? Thank you so much, Nandir.
Oh, okay. So I would probably rank the okay, certain things from going, it's okay to get it from here, to I personally wouldn't, but you could, and then finally to don't recommend. A case, if it's a very basic case, I'd probably be okay with it. Because it's kind of hard to screw it up. The only way you would screw it up is they would go, oh yeah, we sold you that case. Oh, it's not the form factor we said it was. The holes aren't in the right place. Nothing lines up, but we sold you a case.
I have ordered. Go ahead.
I would say next I would go fans and then finally coolers.
Yeah. I've ordered actually water cooling parts from AliExpress. Stuff for Barrow.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, weren't your parts non-moving?
Well, yeah, they're mainly, I mean, they got some rotational parts on them, but yeah, they're extensions, they're adapters, they're parts for water cooling. They're essentially just really fancy pipes.
Exactly. It's the kind of thing it's hard to screw up in a way that people won't detect relatively quickly.
There is one way it screws up. The main risk with AliExpress is the way they ship stuff over here. They don't like get a box and put your stuff in the box and then put your name on it and then your address, and that goes out. Instead, what they do is they get everybody's boxes, a ton of boxes, and they put them on a pallet and they wrap them all up and they ship them at a bulk rate. Now, yours is addressed in there, but it has to get to the post office. Then the post office has to deconstruct this pallet. And then they have to dig down and find your... My point here is stuff from AliExpress does and can get lost.
Yes.
It's not the post office fault. It's just the method of shipping in general.
I'm going to say it's not always the post office's fault.
Not always.
We have had plenty. I'm sure if we look at the history of the other show, there have been postal theft issues.
Yes. Yeah. The other issue is the real big advantage of getting stuff off AliExpress is you get it cheap, but the trade-off is you get it slow.
And sometimes, as I've said, it is not quite 100% to the spec you expect.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, they will lie. There are outright lies on AliExpress. There are some that are just, no, we'll sell you the parts. Just they are very reputable, but there are some that lie about it. Mainly, I guess the if you see a deal that's really too good to be true, it probably is. There are scams on AliExpress. They're lesser than there used to be. It's started to get a little more coordinated now, and it's more reliable, but there are still scams out there. I would say, like I got my water cooling parts. One of them was also, one of the parts was a, water block for a hard drive, SSD drive. They arrived. It took a while, but I got them. I got them considerably cheaper than if I had bought them from someplace like Titan Rig or Performance PCs. Don't get me wrong, excellent companies, but if you can afford to wait and you don't mind just sitting on your thumbs for a while, the price difference on a lot of things is really big.
It's remarkable. It can be extreme. Yeah. I mean, I've seen stuff that was 90% cheaper via AliExpress than going to a local shop.
So, for cases and coolers, just their reputation of the shop is a big thing to consider. There are always going to be some knockoffs. There are always going to be some, but you're going to find some pretty good deals there. Just understand. And returns is the other big problem, because trying to return, good luck with trying to return stuff. If you get something bad, just the only,
there is one other consideration that is happening probably in the next few months with AliExpress and other companies of that nature. The U.S. government is looking at changing the policy on how they deal with a number of them, and their prices are going to go up as a result, because a lot of them have been sort of scamming and not legitimately paying import duties on stuff that they've been doing. They've been lying basically that they are under a certain dollar value on their imports to not have to pay duties. And that loophole is going to be closed.
Yeah, AliExpress is not as bad about that, but that's mainly been because of Temu and Wish. They've caused a lot. Yeah, so they had to ruin it for everybody. So, all right, we got one last one this week. Hey, Nash and Mike and Floofs. We're putting together a gaming PC for my younger cousin, and it's all secondhand parts. We're on a tight budget right now. Parts are Ryzen 3600X, 16 gigs DDR4, Radeon RX 580 Gaming 8G, Cooler Master Half 912, and a Hyper 212 Evo. That's a good case. Still a good case after all these years. A Silicon Power 512 gigabyte SSD, and the reason I'm writing, an MSI B550MA Pro. That's the motherboard. It has one CPU fan header and only one case fan header, which I didn't even know they did something like that these days. I thought it's like you got at least two. But no, apparently I looked up the BIOS, I mean, not the BIOS, the manual on this, and yeah, it only has one system fan case header. What are our options here? We'd like the case to have more than one fan. What's the max number of fans we can put on the splitter? Thank you, Raymond and Deborah in Texas.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a max number of fans. It's a max current that you can draw.
Yeah.
That's what you need to look at. I pulled up the manual on this guy, and that particular header has a max current of 1 amp.
That is typical for a lot of motherboard fan headers to draw 1 amp. Now, the way this works is you have an electrical device that plugs into something that provides power like this. And it says, give me this much power. And the system goes, okie dokie. It can call for more power than the motherboard's rated to provide. And the motherboard will go, okie dokie. And you can actively burn out a fan header that way.
Yep.
Typically, a 140 millimeter and 120 millimeter fans use about 0.3 amps at max. So the safe limit on a system fan header is 320 millimeter or 140 millimeter fans. That's your safe limit. So you can split that one thing 3 ways and not worry about it. Not 4. 3 is your limit. However, there's also caveats there as well. The way the splitter works, a system fan header has 4 pins. It's got a 12-volt pin. It's got a ground pin. It has a sense pin, and it has a tachyometer pin.
Speed control signal.
Yes, speed controls. 2 of those pins are based on getting feedback from the fan itself to determine how fast the fan is going, and the system responds in turn. Like if you have the fan set to go this speed at this temperature, it uses those senses to keep the fan speed going. When you're using a splitter, only one of the fans on the splitter has access to those sense lines. The other 2 don't. The pins are removed. So when it comes to, you can't mix and match fans on a splitter. Well, you can, but one of them, they're going to be getting incorrect power delivery sent to the fans because it's all based on one model of fan, and it'd be getting feedback from that one model. The other 2 won't be sending feedback. So they'll be spinning at whatever rate, which could be completely wrong because it's based off of different models. So what you need to do is, if you have a splitter, 2 or 3 fans, any kind of splitter you put on these, they all should be the same fans. Same make, same model, identical fans. Now,
the one thing you don't list in your parts, unless I missed it here, is your power supply.
Yeah, I don't see a power supply.
There should be additional connectivity on the power supply, even if it is only old style Molex connectors that you can put additional fans on. Problem is, those will almost certainly be running at full speed all the time.
And of course, another option here is to get some kind of fan hub. There are cheaper ones, and those will plug into Molex, and they will give you little individual knobs. Now, these are not going to be automatically controlled by the computer. You will have to set the speeds yourself. Depending on the application, that's not a big deal. But if you want to keep the system quieter and ramp up when things get warmer, then those dial-controlled fan splitters, not ideal. There are others
unless the dials are accessible on the front of the computer.
Yeah, and even then you're always having to reach over, and
it's less inconvenient, but it's
less inconvenient. Yeah. The other option is you get a USB based fan hub. There are a lot of them. Let's see, Razer has them, Corsair has them, Cooler Master has them, Thermalright, there are a bunch of companies have them. And how those work is they have their own software. You can plug in like typically 6 fans or so to those, depending on the size of them. And those can be controlled by software. And they will send back, you control the fans that way. These are a little sketchier, but they do work. There are also powered splitters. These instead of just being able to put 3 fans on them, you can put 6 fans on them. And the trick to it is they draw additional separate power from the power supply directly. That way they don't overload your single power fan connector on the motherboards, the case fan connector. It won't be overloaded because the main power draw will come from the power supply, which can deal much more amperage than the motherboard can. However, I've had spotty luck getting those to work. Maybe mine was just a bad model. You probably have better luck. The other trick there is, of course, it's like the same. It's like a 3-way splitter or 2-way splitter. But again, all the fans have to be the same because they're going to be using one sense pin to get feedback from the fans. So all those fans have to match. It's a 3600X. It's a Ryzen 5 Ruler 2. So You're not. I think the 3-way splitter will be sufficient for this case. 3 120 millimeter fans, 1 exhaust, 2 intake.
I do think so. Yeah.
For a Ryzen 5 3600X. Yeah. Now I did look at this motherboard, and this is kind of a cut rate MSI board. This is like bare bones. It doesn't even have heat sinks on the VRMs, so overclocking is a no. You're not going to be able to mess with this thing very much. It'll work.
Your cousin should be
just,
able to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll work just fine. It's just the 3600X you could get more out of it on a different motherboard. But if you don't have another board, if this is the motherboard you have, this is the one you got to work with. So that Hyper 212 Evo is a little long in the tooth, but again, for a 3600X, it's fine. That'll do just fine. There are newer and nicer, and they're fairly cheap. Thermalright Assassin King X120 SE. God, the names on these things these days. Thermalright's got a lot of cheap ones that are a little more evolved. Not, no pun intended, for modern CPUs, but that Hyper 212 will still be just fine for this application, I feel sure. So, and yeah, that cooler raster, the HAF, the half, that stands for high airflow. Those were good cases. Those were really good designs. So you're going to be fine with this. Yeah, honestly, just get a 3-way splitter. It shouldn't be more than $6. Just remember, identical fans. All the fans you put on that splitter have to be the same. It's not this. That's not true for if you got a USB splitter or a USB hub. That's not true. You could put all different fans on that because they're all controlled individually in software. It's just with the splitters that don't have a software component through USB. Those all have to be the same. Because otherwise you'll have the fans running at different. It's not going to damage them, but they will run at different speeds. And one of them might run at full speed because it'll be going, I don't understand what's going on. So make sure they all match. It's probably your best bet. All right. I think that is it for this week. I don't see anything new. Yepers, that's it. All right. So we will be back next Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions, please, by all means, either send them to us at request@radiodeadair.com or leave them in our YouTube comments. We will pick those up either way. Until next time, we'll see you then. Have a good week. Good night.